Doug Findlater was on council for the newly incorporated district of West Kelowna in 2007 after sitting as chair on the Westside Governance Committee. He was elected mayor for the then district in November 2008 and has since been re-elected twice. He has 7 years' experience representing the district of West Kelowna on the board of the Regional District of the Central Okanagan. In 2014, he was elected chair of the Okanagan Basin Water Board, and he represents West Kelowna on the new Sustainable Transportation Partnership of the Central Okanagan.
Welcome to our Shaw TV studios at Prospera Place. I'm Tim Morton, and today it's Ask the Mayor. In our discussions with Valley mayors, and joining us today is West Kelowna Mayor Doug Findlater, and Mayor Findlater of the city of West Kelowna.
Yes.
Now. Let's talk about, first of all, going back to when you first began at this position and sort of what drives you. What's your passion in this position?
Well, I think you know, I've always been a person to be involved in the community, and my path to this, being involved in this, was a neighborhood association president, got involved in the governance study, and elected chair of that committee. So, and that went on 4 years, and we drove it forward. During that time, I had some major surgeries that nearly took me out, but I was able to keep going. So, driven kind of person to push it forward. We had a referendum, we incorporated, and at that time I actually was going to really retire. I had retired from my career, and basically thought, well, there's 1 year as a councillor, and I've got this knowledge carried over from the governance committee and the regional district. I'll be at the table because there's some transition issues and so on. So I did, and during that time, that year I became passionate about council, the community, the mayor. We embarked on a very, very ambitious path to move our infrastructure, because it became apparent that we had a ton of rural infrastructure, be it roads, sidewalks, recreation, sewer, water, you name it, that was in many cases very old and rural standard. And yet we were a community, when we incorporated, of 28,000 people, which was not insignificant at that time. So that was sort of what drove me, and I signed on for that to help create that change. And the change has been dramatic. On the west side. One thinks back 8.5 years ago since we incorporated. I've been mayor 7.5, what we were before, and all of the changes. It's kind of ironic because when I originally joined the governance committee, and there'd been a couple of studies before that, I was somebody who felt, you know, life is pretty good here. We don't need to change. I'm okay with the status quo. We don't need to change governance. But my views changed during the governance process, where I found out what a municipality, the authority, the powers of a municipality, what they are versus a regional district, and they're substantial to actually get things done. And now, you know, I became a convert during the way that we needed to become a municipality. Now I realize we made a mistake. I'm one of them. That we didn't incorporate 20 or 25 years ago in the early 90s when we had the chance. It should have taken place. Lake Country did incorporate about that time. It was controversial too. We chose not to at that time, but now I wish we had. I wouldn't have been mayor or anything like that, but from the perspective of a municipality, we would be way further ahead.
You mentioned ambitious, and it is, to go from an unincorporated community to a district to a city. What do you see as the biggest challenges during that step, and maybe perhaps the most rewarding?
Well, I think the challenge is always that people's expectations are sky high. They want everything done. I hear from people on a daily basis who want a sidewalk on their street or a new park or something. And instead of rushing out and doing this and that on a reactionary basis, we've developed a series of master plans. We had so many master plans for infrastructure going on. We had a plan of plans, as we called it, you know, in terms of the phasing. And it's a very, very, very significant cost down the line. But these are 20, 25-year plans, so we'll get to it. So when people come forward and want a covered soccer field and so on, we're not just going to respond and say, okay, let's do that. It's in the facilities master plan. And when that finally comes to council, we'll determine where the placement of that is based on what the cost is, what resources we have, can we get some grants and so on. So finding the money to do all of the things that people want us to do is a big challenge. And I've come to be very concerned about wildfire. We have a history of being a wildfire community. I was six months into being mayor in, I think it was July of 2008. We had the Glen Rosa fire. I was personally evacuated, my family. We had the same day the Rose Valley fire, 2 fires in one day. We had 12,000 people evacuated. It looked like those fires could have torn right into the heart of our community in two areas. It was a pretty scary time, and that was a big,
what's happened in Fort McMurray.
Yeah,
and
well, and you know, I lived on the west side in 2003, and we watched what happened as those fires moved through Kelowna at that time, and you know, visions of the same thing in 2009. Fortunately, we did lose some homes in 2009, but not on a really wide scale. And we've had a fire every year, either in or near our community. Most recently, Shelter Cove last year, 2 years ago, Smith Creek, Exclusion Bay, and back in Rose Valley, and so on. So that is a big challenge, a great concern to me, because people being evacuated, and I signed these states of emergency that say you must leave. We can do what we want with your property. We can conscript you, and that's what those are. We totally suspend people's rights. That's a scary thing to do and sign and implement, but the potential for damage from the fires is so significant. Yeah. Fortunately, we've got a great fire department. We've got great relations with other fire departments. The province is very proactive about putting out wildfire. We're doing wildfire mitigation that's slowing it down in some cases where there is an interconnect. So we're making progress on it, but with the climate changing the way it seems to be already, here we are late May. Well, we're into summer in late May instead of late June. We were into spring in March, and a very fast melt. There's very little snow left at higher elevations to dampen down the ground. So very concerning. We've had a little rain lately, and that's, you know, I love rain right now. It's quite reassuring, and hopefully we can skate through the next few months with a bit of rain every now and then.
Now, we were going to talk about this a little bit later, but let's talk about it now, because it is an issue. And have you talked with the province? Would you like to see the province get involved with fire mitigation? Is that a way to go?
To be fair, they do. They provide funding for wildfire mitigation. We think much more could be done with more resources. It's an expensive process, and they don't clear cut. You know, they go in and remove all the flammable stuff of the lower branches and on the ground, and some case trees come out and vegetation thin it out and so on. And when a fire hits those areas, it slows right down. It becomes much easier for fire suppression to do that. That being said, more money would help. But they've been reasonable. Our own fire department looks after that. But I saw some very interesting maps that Chief Brolin and our firefighters had put together recently with some special funding they'd had, and they show where fires have been and where wildfire has taken place, and we're starting to get a ring around the community. And there's also up on the mountains towards Merritt and towards Kamloops, some massive fires took place in the 30s that make the fires that we have here look tiny by comparison. So they've had an impact on where fires can go as well. So I think we'd like to just continue that mapping and continue to mitigate in the areas where we can connect the spots that have already had some mitigation. And I count an area that's had mitigation, I count a fire as an area that's had mitigation. Last summer, the Shelter Cove fire on Westside Road burned right up into the Terrace Mountain Fire of 2009. So you've got a giant fire break.
A natural fire break.
On Westside Road. And of course, the bonus, I guess, is that the mountain sheep population has exploded on Westside Road because they've got new pasture.
Do you consider your community ready for a fire? I mean, as ready as you can be?
We are already planning evacuation routes this year, and we've got some neighborhoods where one way in and the same way out. That's concerned fire departments on high alert. I think we've already got a reduction in burning permits in place to prevent some of those accidental ones. I think you'll see a campfire ban pretty quick soon as the last rain is gone and dries up. So we're as ready as ever. We have a significant fire department on our own of something like 36, 37 firefighters. We work well with the province on fire suppression. The aircraft, BC has aircraft that come into play, helicopters and fixed wing aircraft. Their policy has changed in the last decade. When they have a report of a fire, they're there with aircraft very, very quickly to put it out instead of waiting to see what happens as previously happened. They haven't been very busy this year, but they've been off to northern BC to
Fort St. John.
And I just read some. I think there's some BC firefighters that may be going over to Alberta to help out for a while.
All right, we'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the change from the district of West Kelowna to the city of West Kelowna and what that means for the community and the shared relationships with other communities in the central Okanagan. Welcome back to Ask the Mayor with West Kelowna Mayor Doug Findlater. And Mr. Findlater, let's talk a little bit about the community going from a district of West Kelowna to a city, becoming the 51st city, I guess, in British Columbia. Let's talk about the process of that. How did that happen, and what does it mean for West Kelowna?
Well, we had actually asked for this change some time ago because we felt our community had a sense of community like a city as opposed to this nebulous term district, and we'd been turned down. Then we became aware that the province granted the same request to Maple Ridge. They moved from district of Maple Ridge to city of Maple Ridge. We chatted with our MLA and said, we're still interested in doing that. So it happened. I think it creates a stronger brand. That's actually what Premier Clark said at the ceremony. It's a better brand to be a city than a district.
Is there financial implications?
There's no financial implications in terms of grants or taxation or anything like that. But it is something that's easier to recognize than a district. Especially if you're talking to someone outside of BC where they're not familiar with district municipalities. If you're talking to somebody in Ontario, they know what a city is, but what is this district thing? We also have two other districts that have jurisdiction within our municipality, the regional district and the school district. So that makes us somewhat distinct and reduces the confusion when we're talking about the district. It could be one of three. So it's simply a stronger brand. It will help us attract people, attract investment. And in that sense, there is a financial advantage to it, but certainly not in any direct sense.
Is there still some confusion? I mean, do people still think of you as Kelowna? Do they think of you as Westbank, the West Side, that kind of thing?
Oh, I think there'll always be, but maybe not always, but gradually we're getting our own identity and recognition. I'm wearing this shirt here for Communities in Bloom together with Westbank First Nation. We achieved national recognition as a community. I see, with the West Kelowna Warriors, recently national TV, West Kelowna right out there as a distinct brand and a distinct community. People in this area understand that there's a municipality called West Kelowna. They may not in Vancouver or from afar. There may be some confusion, but in time we deal with that. We are a regional community in the central Okanagan, and Kelowna is the largest player, so there's always going to be some attachment and some connection to Kelowna.
Let's talk about the shared responsibilities you have with the City of Kelowna and the Westbank First Nation and your relationships with that city, for example.
Well, okay, we're all part of the regional district. Westbank First Nation is too, although at the board table a non-voting member, but they receive and pay for some services from the regional district. So something like the Westside wastewater treatment plant administered by the regional district, 3 stakeholders, West Kelowna, WFN, and Peachland. Kelowna's not involved in that, but we tend to govern that through a stakeholder committee. And there are other services that we're involved in regionally. We're all involved in regional parks and regional recycling and so on. We run our own RCMP. We have our own detachment on the north end of downtown Westbank. There's about 45 police officers who work out of that. 23 of them are paid for by the city of West Kelowna, and those are our officers, our detachment. The others are attached to the provincial police force, which includes WFN and the regional district areas, right, all the way to Big White, because that's the rural area. It's the rural area. And there are recently Peachland cracked that 5,000 population barrier, so I believe 4 of those officers are paid for by Peachland, although with their population dropping, they may get a break and be able to drop out of that arrangement at some point. But we set the service levels. We determine how many RCMP officers our taxpayers will pay for, so that's important. Now, the staff sergeant there and the commander-in-chief has recently left to go to a district office near the airport in Kelowna, so someone new is coming in. They may recommend to council what our staffing levels are, what we should be paying for, but that's at the discretion of council based on the science. And we're fortunate as a community. We don't have some of the same depth of problems that some larger communities in the Okanagan have. And Vernon, we don't have a large resident street homeless problem. We don't have a bar flush. We've got a few neighborhood pubs that are pretty well behaved and so on. So we don't seem to need the manpower. We don't get a lot of complaints about RCMP service levels. Of course we do from time to time. Somebody's car gets broken into and they wonder why the police weren't there watching, but
sure.
that kind of thing. But
now you do share some services, like the jail, for example, the cells.
Well, with the RCMP, when we have the police station, and it is built so that there could be an expansion for a jail, but I think it's 6 or 8 prisoners a month that they may take into the detachment for questioning, and then they bring them to Kelowna. So to run a couple of cells, you would still need 24/7 coverage, shift work for jailers and so on. You're probably talking upwards of 8 staff just to keep an eye on one person in there. So it makes sense that we purchase those cells from the City of Kelowna, and we will in the new police station continue that arrangement, and we're happy to do that. The courthouse is in Kelowna, and if they have to go from jail to court, that just makes sense too, that they're in the area here. So we pay our share. Kelowna gets reimbursed fairly for it, and we would expect that. And we would expect Kelowna to make us pay fairly as well. So we do that. Transit is managed by the City of Kelowna and BC Transit. And we are in this bus rapid transit, the 97 Express route from UBCO to Westbank. That's a relationship where we're clearly strong partners. It's Highway 97, so if you pay according to the kilometers in your community. So the bulk of it is Kelowna, but Westbank First Nation is paying something, and West Kelowna. But once you get outside of those transit exchanges on the 97 route, once the Glen Rosa route or the Rose Valley route, or similarly with neighborhood routes in Kelowna, municipality determines the service levels. We determine the route and the frequency. We work with transit and their expertise to evaluate how many people are riding that bus, and if it merits more, we will pay for more. If it's not being used, well, there's a bit of a use it or lose it philosophy,
Right.
and we did reduce some services based on a previous analysis if people weren't on it. But that service works very well as well. It's a cohesive service, good relationship with the city of Kelowna, who have the garage and the maintenance and have the expertise to do it.
Now, you're in a fairly unique situation with the two very large chunks of land belonging to the Westbank First Nation. Do you consider your relationship with them? Are you good neighbors? I mean, there's always going to be, some disputes between neighbors, but...
Yeah. On a day-to-day basis, the relationship at the staff level is excellent. There's a lot of collaboration, cooperation. We have to. The roads connect. We share the sewers. We share drainage. We're doing joint drainage planning and so on. On an additional level, we work. We provide fire service to them. We had an agreement signed this week. Chief Louis and I signed it, where we're providing fire services on an equitable basis to them for an equitable amount of resources paid. So they get the same service that anyone does in West Kelowna, but they pay for it. Yeah. And it's based on the assessed value of their property. So if they build a big box store, then their assessed value would go up, and there'd be additional revenue paid to the fire department for that service being available.
So you get some benefit from that. They get the property tax, but
yeah, they get the property tax, but they buy services. And similarly with the sewage treatment plant, which is under the regional district, but there are some economies of scale that come in working together on these kinds of things. On a softer kind of level, a community level, we've jointly entered Communities in Bloom. I'm very proud of that, actually.
I can see
that we won I think it's the 25 to 50,000 population category in 2015 together. Really pleased to do that. So there is a lot of collaboration. From time to time we have disputes. Most of the disputes, I'll be blunt, tend to come around things that the Ministry of Transportation does and their lack of consultation, at least with us, and suddenly there's a surprise and they've already arranged something with the First Nation and we're not happy about it. So we do have some rancor about that from time to time, but we don't let it get in the way of all the good stuff.
All right, we'll take another short break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the economy, housing affordability in West Kelowna, coming up after the break. Welcome back to Ask the Mayor. Joining us now is West Kelowna Mayor Doug Findlater, and we've talked to a lot of the mayors so far in the Valley about this, and it's affordability for housing in the Valley, and I'll ask you about it. But do you think the average Joe or Jane can afford a place in West Kelowna?
Well, we're certainly seeing that in terms of property sales, in terms of home sales. The reason why I moved to the West Side 4 years ago, and many people have continued to come for during that time, is we have a reputation as one of the most affordable places in the Central Okanagan. If you can get your starter home a bit cheaper in the Central Okanagan. So for someone who's in the purchasing market, it's one of the places to go, and we're certainly seeing that happen, the progression of people all over the Central Okanagan, people that did start in Glen Rosa or Shannon Lake or Rose Valley. That seems to be the way it goes, and they may wind up living in another part of the area. So we're certainly seeing that. We try to facilitate housing for all kinds of needs and people. Rezonings for underway for duplexes. Carriage suites are now pretty much automatic, provided you meet the standards. Secondary suites to provide that kind of housing. And we're looking at compact housing and townhouses and so on. Again, there's some economies of scale in those kind of projects. Bit of resistance from the single-family dwellers in those neighborhoods, and that's one of the challenges, that we have to have people realize that we need all kinds of housing, and also some of those more compact housing developments and even suites is a better use of scarce land. We can't continue to build up the hillsides and expect the taxpayer to pay for fire trucks, police cars, and pipes running up the mountain. We do have to infill. We have to use the resources we have more efficiently and provide a diversity of housing for a lot of people. West Kelowna has not entered the social housing field in the sense. There are a couple that have been historically built on the west side. One of the prerequisites for social housing, as you see in even Kelowna, is that the city owns the land. We own almost no land except for parkland, and that's off limits for social housing. So perhaps in time, as things go along, land will come our way, come into our hands for one reason or another that can be used for social housing. But we're not really in that game yet, and I know there's a need, but also there's a lot of other demands and resources. So I don't see us going out and spending $1 million buying a property and then applying for a grant to put social housing on it for someone.
Trying to attract young people to the community, is that important for West Kelowna? It's becoming an issue in Kelowna. It's one of the oldest communities in Canada, and I'm sure you guys are right up there.
It is an issue. I mean, we are also an affordable retirement community for a lot of people, again, because of that little bit of a discount on housing. People like it, and many of them tend to live there in the warmer months and be gone in the winter months, and that's their prerogative. But we have many young families. We've seen new schools built recently in Marjock Elementary because of growth in the Shannon Lake and Rose Valley areas. I don't know if any others are planned. We've got lots of new developments that will be appeal to young families that are on the books. So the capacity is there, but it's also about having schools. We have lots of schools, but it's about other opportunities, stuff for kids to do, stuff for families to do. We're building an amphitheater in Memorial Park this year for a summer music in the park series. That'll be spectacular and are known for providing kids with. And we support a lot of hockey, rink stuff, a lot of playing fields and so on. We need more. There's a demand for more, but also providing that other kind of recreation for kids that just want to go and hang out. CNR Wharf is very, very popular with families and the younger group. We're building a skateboard park with help from the federal government as well, a grant. Much in demand. That was actually an election issue last time around, with many of our young people wanting, what are you going to do for us? And we were able to put it together and respond to that need. So it's going to be spectacular. So having a community that's a great place to live. And I hear that from people all the time of all ages. I love living here. It's a neat place to live. So that's what attracts families. And
a big scale investment is this Paradise Estates.
That's a very high-end development with a small footprint. Is
that something you're looking for as a community?
Yeah, it's something we're pleased to see. It's actually a very small footprint, and it will also trigger a lot of infrastructure improvements in that area. But also part of the condition is that they put a big chunk of land back into agricultural production. So that's planted, and there's a manager who's looking after the agricultural side. Those are very high-end properties. If they go the way it goes, I think there's 22 of them at $2.5 million each asking price. Do the math on what that means for our tax base. You're getting up there to close to $50 million jump in our assessed values, which is one of the ways we can deal with the catch-up that we have in infrastructure is without breaking people with property taxes. Is if we have an increase in assessed value, then we have more revenue to do the things we want. And then in some cases, if they're improving a road or putting in sidewalks or increasing the capacity in the sewer system near a development and so on at their expense, that saves the taxpayers money. So this is a good development. It is very high-end, and it has a lot of value to us, and it's not really very large. It's very, very compact, and I've been on the site.
Could you see more of that? Would you be open to
I think
more of
we'd
these
be open
on the
to
lakeshore?
open to more of that. Of course, there's a planning process, and open is the word because each development goes through a process of being analyzed and what its impact is on the neighborhood and the infrastructure. We hear from the neighborhood, of course, and that is a factor as well. So certainly open to more of this, and pleased to see it happen.
Is there any type of development that you as a mayor would just feel like absolutely not in my community?
Well, again, one of the things you learn in your very first training as a member of council is that the law requires you to have a bit of an open mind, or to have your mind open sufficiently where it can be changed, rather than locked on to I'll never do this. So,
right.
And I'm in that category, and I
You're
think
flexible.
we have to be open to hear what different proposals have to say, and if it doesn't work out, if it has a negative impact, an overriding negative impact in some way, then we say no.
What are your unemployment numbers over? Do you separate that from say, the Kelowna region, or can you?
We have no way of doing that. That's done by the federal government, and I think it's a census area. The CMA, I'm not quite sure what that means. We're part of a regional economy. It would be hard to, people who live in West Kelowna don't necessarily work in West Kelowna. Some of them drive to the airport, some of them drive to Lake Country, and certainly many people, as did I, commuted for over 30 years to downtown Kelowna. We have an industrial area, Stevens Road area, that actually rocks. It's all kinds of light industry manufacturing there. That I do business visits in that area, and it's amazing what we have there. And the helicopter, 4 helicopter companies as well, and Alpine Aerotech, which is a little bit like a Kelowna flight craft, only for helicopters. But all kinds of manufacturing, everything from bottles to woodworks to put in theaters and all kinds of metal works and so on. So really, very good. So we have a lot of people who are employed in that area, in those trades, but they may also come from Kelowna to work over there.
Do you have room to expand there?
Pardon?
Do you have room to expand your industrial base?
We're looking at how we can, and I think it's going to take some time. There's some agricultural land that you don't really want to go there. We do have some gravel pits in that area. When they're mined out, there's an opportunity there to expand that area as well. But again, somebody owns it and somebody has a productive mining operation on those lands at this point. So the time will come.
It's always an issue getting through West Kelowna. Let's start with the couplet. You had a study done by the province a little while ago, and it suggested it would cost north of $40 million to reroute it. First of all, where would they put that? Where would the road go?
Well, that study was, we were looking at turning the northbound part of the couplet into 6 or 8 lane. The Dobbin Road section where the Save on Foods is.
Yeah.
And return the main street back to the community, so we'd have a kind of like a Bernard Avenue or a Beach Avenue, a traditional downtown street. About $40 million to do that conversion, of about half of which was property acquisition that would actually hurt some businesses in that area as well. So we put it on hold. Then we started to reconsider it. Then the second crossing became a reality. In terms of the study that's underway. And our council we're at the point now where we're saying, why not relocate 97 to connect with the second crossing from Kelowna and have a second, and not a bypass, but a second corridor somewhere to the north of Rose Valley, Shannon Lake, Glen Rosa. Well, I mean, again, that's a technical matter for people to determine based on the economics and the environmental considerations and so on.
Coming off the connector, then down to this new crossing?
Now certainly connect to the connector. And we have another big issue in Glen Rosa, and there's one way in, one way out. That would give the Glen Rosa neighborhood, if that connected across the top, that second and in fact a third access, go up Glen Rosa Road and go either north or south to the connector as well. And I see some possibilities there that it might help make the Crystal Mountain development more viable, because they'd have an access to 97C as well, and a second way in there.
And Peachland's talked about it
and
as well,
Peachland
right?
is promoting, the council and the citizens group, 1,000 Strong, actively promoting, and in their case it's a bypass. We call it a second corridor or a second route, and it would absolutely connect to some of our existing roads, because then it could be a commuter road if it connected into Shannon Lake Road somehow, or Smith Creek Road, or Westlake Road, Glen Rosa Road. You'd have a smoother route home. Not unlike what's being proposed in Kelowna, second crossing presumably somewhere down here, connecting with Clement and in around the base of the mountain, with far less intrusions of other intersections. So you'd have an alternate route. And I must say, the new bridge is great, but it backs up. It isn't necessarily a problem with the bridge. We need a route to clear traffic on Harvey Avenue, particularly, because that's where there's a big problem. And this is where the whole idea of a second crossing comes in. The couplet is a bottleneck as well when you get over to Westbank. So I think we need to think long term. If we're going to spend $40 million here and there, maybe we need for interchanges or to realign the couplet. Maybe we need to think bigger and put the money into a longer term solution, a bigger solution, and maybe we need a $200 million bypass to go with the cost of a second bridge.
Is there a way to smooth traffic along 97 through your community, adjusting traffic lights for some? This is more of a provincial issue, I suppose.
Well, it is, and there's crossing. One of the problems with the couplet is between the two streams, we're now seeing, because there is cross traffic, we're now seeing people backed up out onto the highway in that one short block.
Yeah.
So you can give the highway more green time to force people, to help people get through, but you're going to also back people up onto the highway. So
Right.
I think the idea of thinking about relocating the thing right out of there has merit, and we're trying to get some traction with the ministry on that, and we'll be meeting with them again. We've taken that position with the minister and our MLA, and we'll be following up in September when we're in Victoria for the Union of BC Municipalities. We're always given opportunities for appointments with ministers, and this will be the headliner.
What would the timeline on something like that look like? Even if you got to go tomorrow kind of thing, it would be years away.
Within, if you really wanted to do it, you could do it within 7 or 8 years. If you really wanted to do that, that's feasible.
Yeah. All right, thanks. We'll come back after a short break and wrap things up with Mayor Doug Findlater. Welcome back to Ask the Mayor with West Kelowna Mayor Doug Findlater, and let's get into the biggest changes you've seen since you've been in West Kelowna since the mid-70s, good and bad.
Well, I moved to Westbank area, in a very rural area on Glencoe Road in 1975. And at that time, it was a very small place. There was no commercial development on the west side. Our doctor was over here, our dentist was over here, our eye doctor. We shopped in downtown Kelowna at Safeway, that if we needed a grocery run. So we've seen big changes on the west side. All those services now exist either in West Kelowna or Westbank First Nation. We're a better community for it. We've got all those jobs. It's good for the carbon footprint, so to speak. We were just talking about the bridge and traffic. Well, we don't have to come to Kelowna anymore. It's very rare. Right. I only come over here for a business meeting. Now we're self-reliant on that side of the lake. We've had a lot of growth. Some of it hasn't been good growth in terms of the hill, growing up the hillsides. We stayed too long, in my opinion, as I said earlier, under rural governance, under the regional district, where they just don't have the tools to manage growth, to require roads to be built to service those neighborhoods and connect them to the center and other standards. So that's maybe the downside of it. When I first moved there, I always thought I might move back to the Kootenays. We'd be here for a while, make some money, and go back, or even retire and go back. I love it here now, though. I mean, it is a great place to live, and I love all of the things we have in our community to do. I love the opportunities in Kelowna. If you want to go to movies or cultural, Big White, this is a wonderful place to live. We do live in paradise here. So I think managing growth is, if anything, is the downside, that because everybody else wants to move here too, and we have to continue to manage that well and even do it better than we do.
And you're the home of the national champions in hockey now. Let's talk about that a little bit. A great run they had. They upset Penticton, and then from there they just took off.
Well, this is a source of a lot of happiness. I and my wife are season ticket holders, and we're still smiling, and they got that little glow from Sunday. They had a fantastic run, and they had a tough series against Salmon Arm initially. Then they took on the V's in Penticton, out of Penticton. They lost 2 games in Penticton. They roared back and won 4 straight, which is unheard of because they always get beat up by Penticton. They might win a game or 2, but to win 4 straight. And it was great to have all those Penticton fans in our arena. I mean, it filled the place. And then they went on to the provincials, and a bit of a bridesmaid team, but they had a tough series with Nanaimo and Chilliwack eventually too, and came out champs. And we kind of thought, wow, that's really nice to win BC, and left it at that in our hearts and minds. But I think the coach and the players knew differently than we did, and they were off to Estevan, and they had a tough series. Their nemesis seemed to be the Brooks Bandits, and who followed them to the Nationals later on, and they played again. A real rivalry developed, but they came out of Estevan as undisputed as the Western champs, off to the National. And can you believe this? We're still like that, and they managed themselves very, very well in Lloydminster. Really good team, awesome players. Their goalie is somebody who I think is going to catch the eye of the people who draft people. Whether the others do, I don't know, but it's a very cohesive group of young men who respect each other, play well together, and a very powerful team as a unit, and that was their magic. Well, who creates that but the coach? And they're very well coached. They've got one of the best coaches in junior hockey in Canada. So very pleased. We have some celebrations coming up, and I'll certainly be there, and hope the community turns out.
All right, a real hockey fan. Well, thanks for joining us today for this Ask the Mayor. Don't forget, you can send in your questions, and we'll ask the mayor in your community.